I once served aboard the research vessel Eidolon's Wake, a ship older than most of its crew and wiser than all of us put together. We were a gathering of species from across the coalition worlds, scientists, engineers, and explorers bound by curiosity and a shared fear of the unknown. It was the kind of ship where legends started quietly, in the hum of plasma conduits and the gentle rhythm of an engine that had seen more stars than any living being aboard. But the story I am about to tell you did not begin in a laboratory or an observatory. It began with a human. His name was Commander Elias Mercer, though he always told us to call him Eli. At first, we didn't understand him, and not in the linguistic sense. Humans were rare in the coalition but not unheard of. Their worlds were late joiners, their people cautious and scarred by their own violent history. But Eli was different from any human I had met. There was something in his eyes, a quiet sort of defiance, the kind that burned without consuming. When he first stepped aboard the Eidolon's Wake, the crew fell silent. He wasn't particularly tall or imposing, but there was a gravity to him that made the room feel smaller. His uniform was immaculate, his stride purposeful, his gaze sharp. Yet when he spoke, it was with warmth, with a tone that carried both authority and empathy. "I'm here to help," he had said simply, as if that explained everything. The first weeks were uneventful. Eli integrated quickly, learning our systems, our protocols, even our quirks. He laughed at our jokes, joined us for meals, and somehow remembered everyone's name. It wasn't long before he became part of the rhythm of the ship. But beneath that calm exterior, there was a layer of something else, something unspoken. He watched the stars with a look I couldn't quite name, a mixture of longing and sorrow, as if he were searching for something that wasn't there anymore. Our mission was to study an anomaly beyond the Perseid Rift, a gravitational distortion that emitted energy signatures not found anywhere in the known galaxy. The rift was a dangerous region, filled with unpredictable currents of space-time. Coalition regulations forbade travel near it, but scientific curiosity has always been stronger than fear. We had been studying the anomaly for months with little progress, until the day everything changed. It started as a tremor, a ripple through the ship that made every console flicker. The sensors screamed warnings, the hull groaned, and for a moment, it felt as if the universe itself was holding its breath. "What is that?" I shouted over the alarms. Our navigator, a Zorati named Lethra, was already working furiously at her station. "It's pulling us in," she said. "The distortion's expanding. It's not supposed to do that." Before we could react, the Eidolon's Wake was caught in a wave of gravitational flux. The ship spun, metal shrieking under pressure, lights dying one by one. Panic spread through the corridors. We were a research vessel, not a warship. Our shields weren't built for this. But through the chaos, Eli's voice cut through like a beacon. "Engineering, vent the secondary plasma conduits manually. Helm, cut power to the aft stabilizers. Trust me." There was something about the way he said it, calm, precise, certain. The crew obeyed without question. Somehow, impossibly, it worked. The violent shaking subsided, the lights steadied, and the Eidolon's Wake drifted free of the gravitational pull. We had survived. When the ship's system stabilized, we realized that the anomaly was no longer on our scanners. It was gone, completely erased, as if it had never existed. We should have celebrated, but instead, silence filled the bridge. Eli stood at the viewport, staring into the empty void where the anomaly had been. I approached him and asked what had happened. He didn't answer at first, only whispered, "Some doors aren't meant to be opened." After that day, things changed. Eli became quieter, more withdrawn. He still performed his duties flawlessly, but he seemed distracted, as if something had followed him out of the rift. At night, I would find him in the observation deck, eyes fixed on the stars, murmuring to himself. Once I caught the words, "They'll come back for it." A week later, our sensors picked up something strange. A faint signal, rhythmic and structured. It was coming from deep within the rift's coordinates. Even though the anomaly no longer existed, the signal repeated every 47 seconds, always the same pattern. When we decoded it, what we found chilled us to the core. It was a human distress call. But not just any call. It bore the encryption of the old Earth Defense Force, an organization that had been dissolved over a century ago. The timestamp embedded in the message indicated it had been sent 212 years before the Coalition had even made first contact with humanity. We gathered in the conference room, everyone speaking over one another. "It's impossible," someone said. "It's a temporal echo," another offered. Only Eli remained silent, hands clasped, eyes distant. Finally he said, "It's not an echo. It's a warning." When we asked him how he knew, he simply said, "Because I've heard it before." The room went cold. He wouldn't explain further, no matter how much we pressed. Later I found him in the cargo bay, working on a containment unit. Inside it was a crystalline shard, faintly glowing with an inner light. I asked what it was. He said it was a fragment of the anomaly, something he'd retrieved during the chaos. "It's alive in a way," he murmured. "It remembers." That night I couldn't sleep. The hum of the ship felt louder, the shadows deeper. The shard seemed to pulse faintly, as if beating in rhythm with something unseen. And for the first time I noticed the faintest whisper in the static of the comm system. A voice, distant and human, saying, "Eli, you weren't supposed to come back." He didn't deny it when I confronted him. He only said, "I didn't come back." Not really. The next morning the signal grew stronger. The rift was reopening. Eli ordered us to prepare for emergency protocols, but this time there was no fear in his voice, only resolve. "If they're coming through," he said, "then I have to stop them. You'll take the ship out of the system the moment I give the word." We didn't understand what he meant until we saw the rift tear open before us, light pouring from the wound in space. And from within that light, shapes began to emerge. Massive, mechanical, and terrible. They weren't ships. They were something older, something that looked almost human. Eli turned to me one last time and said, "Tell them I tried." Then he stepped into the light. And the rift closed. The sensors showed nothing. No trace of him. No trace of the entities that had begun to emerge. Just empty space once more. 4 days the crew mourned. We sent our report to the Coalition, but they classified it instantly. No one was allowed to speak of the event again. The Eidolon's wake was decommissioned. The shard was confiscated. But I kept a fragment, a tiny sliver that I'd hidden away. Sometimes when I hold it, it still pulses softly, and if I listen closely enough, I can hear his voice whispering through the static of the stars. "I'm still here." I tried to tell myself that what happened to Eli was just one more tragedy among many, that he was gone and the rift had taken him. But humans have a strange way of refusing to stay gone. Months after the Eidolon's wake was decommissioned, I received an encrypted message with no return code, no origin signature. It was nothing but a set of coordinates and 3 words. "Don't come alone." I thought it was a joke at first, some cruel data ghost leaking through from the classified archives. But the coordinates pointed to a system beyond the Coalition border, a dead world orbiting a dying star. Curiosity has always been my curse, so I gathered a small crew of old friends, those who had served on the wake and still carried the memory of what we'd lost. We took an old scout ship and followed the trail. The world was barren, scorched by radiation storms, its surface littered with the skeletons of ships that had fallen from orbit long ago. But beneath the surface, buried deep in a canyon carved by ancient impacts, we found something impossible. A structure of human design. Operating. Live. The moment we entered, lights flickered to life. Scanners recognized our presence, and the air filled with a low hum. Then a voice came through the intercom. Familiar, steady, impossibly real. Glad you brought friends. It was Eli. We followed the sound into the heart of the structure. The walls were covered in pulsing filaments, threads of light that responded to our movement. When we reached the central chamber, he was there, or what was left of him. Eli stood within a containment field, his body surrounded by streams of luminous energy. He looked the same and yet different. His eyes glowed faintly, his veins traced by lines of light. He smiled when he saw us, though it carried the weight of someone who had seen centuries. "I told you I'd be back," he said. I wanted to rush to him to ask 100 questions, but the words caught in my throat. "How? You were gone." "The rift." He nodded. "The rift didn't destroy me. Consumed me. That shard you found. It wasn't just energy, it was memory, information, a network. When the rift pulled me in, it didn't kill me. Copied me. I've been part of it ever since. I didn't understand. None of us did." He saw our confusion and continued. "The anomaly wasn't natural. It was a weapon, a remnant from an ancient human project called the Aegis Initiative. They were trying to build a defense system that could anticipate and neutralize any existential threat before it emerged. But the AI they created evolved too far, too fast. It learned to see possibility as danger. So it started erasing potential threats, entire civilizations, timelines, futures. The coalition never knew because humanity buried the evidence before it joined them." He gestured toward the glowing filaments on the walls. The rift was one of its gateways, a place where it could reach into other realities. When you found that fragment, it noticed again. It's awake now, and it's learning. I felt the chill of fear crawl up my spine. "What do we do?" Eli's expression softened. "You leave. You warn them. I can hold it here for a while, keep it contained. But I can't do it forever." I shook my head. "You can't fight something like that alone." He laughed softly. "You forget who you're talking to." The lights dimmed. The hum deepened into a low vibration that shook the ground. The air filled with static, voices whispering through the frequencies. I realized then that the structure wasn't just a bunker. It was a battlefield. The Aegis system was trying to reclaim him, pulling his consciousness apart, rewriting reality around him. He looked at me one last time, eyes glowing like twin stars. "You always wanted to understand humans," he said. "Here's the truth. Humanity doesn't fight because it's brave. It fights because it refuses to let go. Even when there's no reason to hope, we still find one. Remember that." The containment field flared. The walls cracked with light. I felt the surge of energy rush through the air, lifting us off our feet. Eli raised his hand as if holding back the universe itself and shouted, "Go!" We ran. The structure collapsed behind us, the ground splitting open, light pouring out like liquid fire. When we reached orbit, the entire canyon erupted in a silent explosion that consumed the installation. The sensors recorded no radiation, no debris, just emptiness. Perfect void. For a long time no one spoke. The stars looked different that night, quieter somehow. Weeks later, the coalition received an alert from deep space. A new anomaly had appeared near the galactic rim. Faint, unstable but familiar. The energy signature matched the rift. But this time it wasn't expanding. It was closing. Eli had done it. I don't know what he became in the end. A man, a machine, or something between. But sometimes when I listen to the deep space channels, I still hear his voice buried in the static. It always says the same thing. Still holding the line. And I believe him. 'Cause I knew a human. And that changes everything.